السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحمد ونصلي على رسول الكريم. I'd like to welcome everyone. We have a very special program tonight about Jerusalem with Dr. Yahia Abdul Rahman. I introduced him at Jum'ah, but I'll say briefly again for those that weren't there. And as you know, we have a lot that are attending on Zoom, so when we get to questions, we'll make sure to take their questions as well. Dr. Yahia is really the father and pioneer of Islamic finance in America. He's the founder of La Riba Bank in California, which now is the Bank of Whittier. And he's also the author of The Art of Islamic Banking and Finance, and he's also been one of the co-founders of the first Islamic stock portfolio, the first Islamically approved fund. And of course, he's spoken in many of masajid. He's been involved in founding many of the Islamic centers. So we're very lucky to have him. And also, he's somebody that I know has traveled a lot. After Salat al-Jum'ah, we were talking about Lahore. He spent a lot of time there. My wife is from Lahore. And we're gonna have him visit Bangladesh as well, inshallah. Soon. But he's been all over the globe.
He'll be my hero if you get me in Bangladesh.
Let's do it. Bismillah.
I haven't seen Bangladesh.
Inshallah. So we can learn a lot from his reservoir of knowledge and experience.
Inshallah.
So it's my pleasure and my distinct honor to welcome you, Dr. Yahia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. He asked Joha. You know, Joha is actually a sarcastic figure in the culture of Turkey, actually, and we picked it up as Joha. He said, Joha, where do you come from? He said, I'm coming from the country my wife comes from. So you should know Lahore very well, right? Very good. Alhamdulillah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ala sahbihi wa tabi'in. I'll give you the background of how we did this study. We started in the Islamic Center of Southern California, 1978. We were contacted by the Pope John Paul II, to start a new movement called the Interfaith Movement. And that was started in 1978. But then I don't like photo ops. You know, most of the so-called interfaith activities, we go there and take pictures, say hallelujah, we have a relationship with the Jews, but these relationships don't appear in a situation like the one we have in Gaza. You know, everything falls apart. So I said, what we need to have a study. The evangelicals claim that we Muslims worship a different God from the God they worship. So we went to the most prominent evangelical seminary called Fuller Seminary, F-U-L-L-E-R, and we did a study for 1 year. And the study concluded, after a lot of research, including some of this, that indeed Muslims worship the same God that Jesus prayed for and was promoting, and also Moses and Abraham. The second thing is we were very active in doing a educational video for the Los Angeles Unified School District, which is millions of students. And I was in charge of writing the manuscript. So I wrote this manuscript, then of course, the Los Angeles Unified School District sent it to an attorney to read it. And he came back to me, every time I said Prophet Abraham, he crosses it. He says, Patriarch Abraham. So I called him up. I say, why are you doing this? So is this Prophet Abraham? He said, no, I am Jewish. He is not a prophet, he is a patriarch. A patriarch means the father of all prophets. But we believe he's the father of all prophets, but in the same time, he is also a prophet. But that is the beginning of what motivated me to do the study. And I'm going to make it as short as I can, but then if you want details, we can share the details. The first thing, which is really was striking for me, do you know that when Sephronius, who is the chief priest of the Greek Orthodox Church, the Byzantine Church in Jerusalem, when the Muslims won over Jerusalem, he would not give the key to anyone but Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab. So Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab moved to, I'm sorry. Sorry. Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab took a trip all the way from Mecca all the way to Jerusalem to get the key. So they started a process of negotiating. So it's called, of course, the Umariya, a treaty or agreement between the Jews and the Christians, the Muslims and the Christians. And the biggest sticking point in the negotiations was the position of the Jews. I don't know if you know this or not, but I didn't know. The Jews were prohibited from entering Jerusalem for 500 years. Let me repeat this again. They were prohibited from entering Jerusalem for 500 years. And the Muslims, who have been the new kids on the block, have been around for 26 years. When Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab went to Jerusalem, he insisted that the Jews got to be treated equally, because that is the promise of the treaty of Sayyidina Umar that he wanted to sign. To compromise, they agreed that the Jews will be allowed for the first time to enter Jerusalem in the morning and leave in the evening and never have property there. As a matter of fact, by mere coincidence, the chief priest of the Christian church in Jerusalem came on television 2 days ago, 3 days ago. I don't know if you have seen him or not, but he said, we need that key back because we gave it to Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab. Actually, he said the pure hands of Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab, so he can keep Jerusalem protected. Now, the people today, and most the Arabs today, they cannot do this. We need that key back because we trusted the Muslims to be, the custodians and so on and so forth. So anyway, make a story short, they started coming, and he said, I wish the Sayyidina Umar would not allow the Jews to come back in Jerusalem. But of course, we go by the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that, we respect all religions and all faith. That was the thing. But let me also tell you the importance of Jerusalem. Now, there are some people like Mr. Zidane in Egypt. I don't know if you know him or not, but he claims that there's nothing called Al-Aqsa Mosque. It's not called Jerusalem. It's not there. So they can say whatever they want. But we know that Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he started praying to Allah in the cave of Hira, he directed his face to Jerusalem. And that is not very well known by many Muslims. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not want to direct his face to Al-Kaaba because it was filled by over 250 or 300 idols. He did not want to face the idols in Mecca. So he directed his face to Jerusalem. So it was the first Qibla that the Prophet ﷺ directed his face to. The second important point, it is a site of Isra and Mi'raj. And I don't need to tell you, I'm sure our sheikh here, our doctor here, and our wonderful young man here have been talking to you about Isra and Mi'raj. So that is the importance of Jerusalem. So Jerusalem is not something that we take lightly in our Islamic faith. Shi'is and Sunnis, Baha'is, no, but Shi'is and Sunnis, Hanafis, Malikis, you call them whatever you want, Boris, they're all consider Jerusalem to be a very sacred place, the third most sacred place in Islamic history, and it cannot be just left like it was left by many of the Muslim leaders. And that is what started this whole episode of Gaza. They said, listen, that's my assessment. They said, listen, we have prepared for this, prepared with the rockets, prepared with the plans and so on and so forth. Now they are signing a treaty with the Saudi Arabia, the place of Medina and Mecca, and we're going to be completely cleaned out. So let's use it. Because, like I said in the Jum'ah khutbah, when Mr. Netanyahu went to the United Nations, he had a big map, with all green. He said, this is Israel, the new greater Israel. And that is the end of it. Anyway, let's go to Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. Now, I want to start with a verse from Surah Al-Baqarah, and I want to tell you it's verse number 2, 136. I have a limited number of copies, but if you want this to be emailed to you, I'll be glad to email it to you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Qulu amanna, say that we believe. Billahi, in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one. Wama unzila ilayna, and what was revealed to us. Wama unzila ila Ibrahim, and what was revealed to Prophet Ibrahim. And then after Ibrahim, wa Ismaila wa Ishaq. Now, the Quran is a very accurate document. So if Ishaq came before Ismail, he would have said, wa Ishaq wa Ismail. But I said, wa Ismaila wa Ishaq. So that is these two important characters that we'll come to. وَيَعْقُوبَ وَالْأَسْبَاطَ أُوتِيَ مُوسَى وَعِيسَى وَمَا أُوتِيَ النَّبِيُّونَ مِنْ رَبِّهِمْ لَا نُفَرِّقُ بَيْنَ أَحَدٍ مِّنْهُمْ. We never differentiate between them. So a Muslim actually looks at all the prophets as equal. And that is the only thing we say about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is the seal of all prophets, the last of all prophets sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But لا نفرق بين أحد منهم. So that's the first thing. Now we come to the 3 sacred books. The first sacred book is called the Torah. The Torah is also called the Old Testament. I'll tell you why. Now the Torah were the information and the injunctions that was sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam. And there is another document that the Jews rely on, and these are the writings of their rabbis and scholars and chief rabbis. It's called the Talmud. 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 The Talmud is as important in the Jewish faith as the Old Testament. Now, one of the most prominent writers in the Talmud is a man by the name of Musa ibn Maimun. In English, it's called Maimonides. And if you want to know about Maimonides, you can actually go to Google. And the thing about Maimonides is he and his brother, who was a big gold trader, lived in Spain. And I don't know if this, but Spain used to actually look at the Arabic language and the Islamic culture as the prime place to get intellectualized and educated and so on and so forth. 800 years in Spain and Portugal. So he was doing trading with Egypt, and he told his brother, Musa ibn Maimun, or Maimonides, to come to Egypt. And he became one of the prominent, effective, influential doctors. He was a doctor, and politicians, and scholars in the Talmud. And as a matter of fact, this man, I wish that professors like Dr. Tariq here, or Tarif here, and Dr. would actually do research on Musa ibn Maimun, because I looked for information on Musa ibn Maimun. What is his role with Salahuddin al-Ayyubi in the liberation of Jerusalem from the Crusaders? Was he influential? Was he using the Muslims to do what we have done against the Crusaders? This is very, very untalked about. And I hope the Muslim would be writing about it. All I'm telling you is I hope to motivate 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 of you to do research. The objective is, America always says we're a Judeo-Christian country. My dream is to make America a Judeo-Christian Islamic country. It is on its way, a big way, I'll tell you that, to become a Judeo-Christian Islamic country, inshallah. But it will only happen if we take that responsibility seriously. So we do research, we do work. If you want to do your PhD, your master's degree, do it on that subject. Then what will be the elements to make America a Judeo-Christian Islamic country? It will be a much easier task for us compared to the Christians, because the Christians are not looked upon as legitimate by the Jews. But they said, oh, we love Jesus. The Jews had movements called Jews for Jesus. When I came to America in 1968, I was amazed there was some Jews for you, because I didn't know that this is going on in America. But that is what I'm hoping for. that we can easily make that bridge, that would be very effective. So inshallah, our children, grandchildren will make a difference in America, inshallah, in the future. Now, so we talked about the Old Testament and the Torah and the Talmud. For the Christians, they have something called the New Testament. Now, if you look at the Bible, I have a Bible in my, because I am staying at the Marriott, so they have the Bible in the drawers. You look at the Bible, it's so thick, right? Actually, the Bible is not that thick. The Bible, which is the New Testament, consists of 4 books, the same books written by 4 different saints. And I want to read it from here because I don't want to make a mistake. They are representing the 4 books, actually: St. John, St. Mark, St. Matthew, and St. Luke. Okay. They are 4 books, same content, but varying in the writings. That's the New Testament. In addition to 12 messages that Jesus claimed to have written to his followers. All right. So if you look at the big thick book called the Bible, 80% of it is the Old Testament. 80% of it is the Old Testament, and 20% of it are 4 books. So there is not much in it, but they took it and they glorified it. You know, the people in the Vatican especially glorified it. There's actually a Bible version that is updated on a yearly basis, a King James Bible, published in the United Kingdom. So that is the Bible that we talk about. So you have the Old Testament and the New Testament. And then the Quran, and we all know the Quran, so I'm not going to talk about it. So the challenge is how to lay the foundation of making America a true Judeo-Christian Islamic America. Now, if we can achieve that, the sky is your limit in America, right? Not only America and the West, inshallah. The next thing is Sayyidina Ibrahim. We talked about the first thing about Sayyidina Ibrahim. He's not looked upon as a prophet. He's looked upon as a father of all prophets. And he had 2 children, Ismail wa Ishaq, Ishmael and Isaac. Now, he married 2 ladies. He first married Sarah, who came from a noble family, an elite family, right? And then he married Hajar, who came from a humble family. Now, the Judeo-Christians, especially the evangelicals, they look at Ishmael as an illegitimate child of Hajar. And they look at the Muslims, who are the followers of Ismail, actually the descendant of Ismail, as the children of the slaves, and they are the slaves. So you and I are looked upon as the slaves. Now, I mean, I'm not saying this is a claim, but I sat down and we discussed that. So I'm saying this because we need to learn that. Because if we know it, then we can communicate with them. Understand me? So that's the slave. Now, they claim that Sarah was the elite and she had Isaac, and that is the first claim. We'll put that on the side. How did I learn about this? I'm a troublemaker, so I go to different places. One thing I'm not a guy who likes to be in the limelight, but I just go and visit centers, fi sabilillah. I was in a church once representing the Islamic Shura Council of Southern California, which is the first ever Shura Council in America, to represent about 700,000 Muslims in the Southern California area. So they invited me to celebrate Abraham. So the assistant pastor said, "Let us proceed in the name of Abraham and Sarah." I said, "What happened to Hajar?" I said that. So we don't discuss Hajar now and so on. So anyway, I said, "I'm not going to walk with you until you say in the name of Abraham, Sarah, and Hajar." Anyway, after a discussion, she said it. But that's how I learned about it. So, matter of fact, if you watch a program called on Family TV, it's called the 700 Club by Pat Robertson. I don't know if you know that club or not. Go to YouTube, the 700 Club, Pat Robertson. He says that the Muslims are the children of the slaves and they are the slaves. So that is what they think about us. Now, if you engage with the Christians and the Jews and so on and so forth, and you actually have samosa and chai, like I told you, I mean, so, and you develop relationships, then you will be on your way safely to a Judeo-Christian Islamic America, inshallah. I'm not saying this only, but the other things. Now, second issue, the sacrifice of the son of Prophet Ibrahim. Now, in the Judeo-Christian literature, the sacrifice was attempted on Isaac. That's what they believe in. But of course, we believe the sacrifice was attempted on Prophet Ishmael alayhi salam. That's the second point. The third point is, where did the sacrifice occur? Now, in the Judeo-Christian literature, they say it occurred at a mount called Mount Moriah. Mount Moriah is known to have a tree grown in it called the tree of Moriah, Shajarat al-Mur, which produces a fruit which is very bitter, right? And it's very well known. But afterwards, it became Mount Zion, and afterwards became Dome of the Rock, and so on and so forth. We'll talk about that later on. But this is Mount Moriah. Now, we, as you know, believe that it was Prophet Ishmael, and it happened at the foothill of Mount Arafat, right? There is a minority story, but not very well publicized, that it occurred at the heights of Marwa, Safa and Marwa, right? But that's not proven yet. It's not researched, because the word Marwa and Mur are very close to each other. That's why the problem with the Judeo-Christian literature is it is not documented properly, because it did not come in the age of printing. The Quran came in the age of printing, so changing it and so on was very difficult. So it was all documented properly, because it came in the age of the discovery of the paper, of documentation, and so on and so forth. Now, so as a matter of fact, so now we have this yeah. So now we come to the building of the Kaaba. Now we believe that Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam was tested, al-bala al-azim, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the biggest of all tests. This is like an engineer, a civil engineer. In order to become a civil engineer, he's got to pass the civil engineering registered engineer test, right? So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, he actually, it's okay. He actually passed the test. It's okay. It's all right. He passed the test, and then he said, Ibrahim, now you are qualified to build the Kaaba. So Prophet Ibrahim and his son Ismail, they built the Kaaba. Now, in the Judeo-Christian, they actually have a very interesting story. The story is that David was busy killing the anti-gods. Do you know what they call the anti-gods? What's the names of the anti-gods? You'll be amazed. The Philistines. So every time you mention the word Palestinians, what triggers in their head? The word Philistines. So that's something that we need to clean up from the literature. How we can do it, I don't know. But I'm sure we have wonderful, smart men and women who can help us do that. So David was actually busy killing these people. And he wanted to build a temple to commemorate his father Abraham. The chief rabbis at that time said, no, your hands are full of blood. You cannot do that. By the way, the son of Ibrahim, David is called King David. And matter of fact, the King David, they have a crown and so on when they go the evangelical do things. So anyway, so David said was not allowed, and he allowed his son. They called him the wise King Solomon. The wise King Solomon, and that wise King Solomon is the one that actually built the temple. Now, the temple that they talk about is different from the temple we talk about. The temple we talk about is the Kaaba, أول بيت وضع للناس. And actually, we commemorate the only religion that keeps the story of Ibrahim alive is the religion of Islam. We have a whole ritual called the Hajj, whereby the first thing that you go in Mecca, what do? Two rak'ahs at the maqam Ibrahimi. So we start the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, we do the tawaf, and then what do we do in Safa and Marwa? We recreate the story of his wife Hajar, and so on and so forth. So this is the Kaaba. What is the Temple of Solomon that we talk about? The Temple of Solomon that we're talking about is actually mentioned in Surah An-Naml. There is a chapter in the Holy Quran called the chapter of An-Naml, where Sayyidina Sulaiman, I'm sure you know that, he sent to the Queen of Sheba, and the Queen, when on her way over, they built this fabulous place with floors made out of crystal glass, such that when she walked in, she thought it was a pond of water. she took her skirt off because she was afraid. He said, no. So that is the temple that they're talking about. That temple was destroyed twice. Built, a fabulous temple built and then destroyed. And then later on, after 60, 70 years, it was built again, but in a humble way by a very fair Persian king that came to be fair to everybody. And that is the temple of Sayyidina Sulaiman. So the two temples are different. So we need also to bring that to the minds of the Muslims and our children and grandchildren so they can get to know the details of it. By the way, in all the excavations made by the Israelis to find a remnant of any of the pieces of the temple, they could not find any at all. And as a matter of fact, when Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab went to Jerusalem and got the keys, he went to Moriah Mountain or Mount Zion, and it was used as a garbage dump by the Byzantines to prohibit the Jews from going to it and commemorating what happened to David and Solomon. And the first thing he did, he took his jubba and he collected that garbage, and all of his followers helped that, and he cleaned it up in respect to the history of that part of Jerusalem. Now, I talked about Mount Zion and Haram al-Sharif or Dome of the Rock and so on and so forth. That is probably as much as I want to say today. But if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer it. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم إن شاء الله. So, yes, sister.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaykum salam.
So just now you mentioned about the place of sacrifice of Ishmael alayhi salam. So is there some documentary evidence in Quran or Bible or any other book that was it the Arafat or it was between Safa and Marwa?
No, if you read the Quran, people who know the Quran very, very well, the Quran does not focus on individuals. For instance, the problem with studying the Quran, unfortunately, is you don't put a timeline on the events that the Quran is talking about. And that creates impatient Muslims. They say, how come ألم ترى كيف فعل ربك بعاد إرم ذات العماد? It took a long time. But a Muslim reading this, how come Allah did this to Ad and he doesn't help us in Palestine, right? It takes time. And that's why I always suggest when I go to Al-Azhar, I say, please, when you talk about historic events in the Quran that is mentioned in just one small little verse like that, put a timeline on it. Then people will know that the judgment of Allah is there. So in the Quran, it doesn't mention places, it mentions stories and focuses on the lessons learned from that event. In contrast to the Bible, in the Bible, as a matter of fact, also, the Bible is a document which is used for forecasting the future. And we know that the future is only in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I go to Dallas because we have a branch in Dallas, so I spend my free time watching the evangelical and the Christian churches to see what they do. They take verses from the Bible and they put on it, they load it with projections that cannot be actually substantiated. But they do it this way. That's their process. So that is the answer. Long answer to your question. It doesn't.
But about Safa and Marwa, about Zamzam, there is a specific sign there that is this in Quran that it is that
Yes.
Hajara was from Safa to Marwa.
Yes.
There
Yeah.
is it that it is the definite place over there.
Yes, but it doesn't say that it is Hajar and Ismail, right? It doesn't say the name. It doesn't. It says the fact that, you know, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to take care of his servant, then Allah will create the reasons for it to happen. In that case, it was the tawaf, I mean the hovering between Safa and Marwa. And then the of Marwa was erupted to bring water and so on. But it is not mentioned, yeah.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum ji.
Yes, sir.
I just have a very small question, but it has been, please excuse I don't have this much knowledge of Quran, you know, and I've read it, but not with the meanings. And, you know, like you say, that's not the way. But anyway, that why the Britishers, when they were asked to move these people, they took them all the way to England, London, or England, whatever area was. Why
Tell me
couldn't they
what
put
she's
him
saying.
at a place where, because, to the place where they were Muslims and there were only difference of little bit, and put them in the Israel, Palestine, you know, and poor these Palestinians have been just suffering. There has to be some reason that either they didn't like them or they were you know, afraid of them, that they might create problems. And out of all the world, because they were the ruling time, why did they just took them to England, you know, to England, and put them over there, and took the land from local people from there, you know.
So you're asking why the Palestinians were called the anti-gods?
Yeah.
Because they tried to convert them and they did not accept it. The Philistine tribes did not accept the teachings of David and Solomon. So they call him the anti-god, the Philistines. I'm telling you.
She's asking why did the Jews choose Palestine to create a state? And she was asking, is this anti-Semitism?
I
That's
didn't
why
understand.
they sent them to Palestine. Instead of
You're
keeping them
asking
in
why the Jews picked up Palestine. As a matter of fact, the Jews picked up 7 places. One of them is Argentina, another one is Uganda, one of them, I can send you the article on that. But here's what happened. The Zionists, Theodor Herzl, actually thought that it is the most suitable place because it has the roots of King David and King Solomon in it. And it was the least developed community in the world. Actually, the Palestinians were not very well educated. One of my teachers, Dr. Hassan Hathoud, rahimahullah, I don't know if you're Dr. Hassan Hathoud or not, but he was volunteering with the Palestinians as a doctor in 1948. Just to give you a little piece of the information about their education, the villages that are 3 kilometers away from each other, each one thought that they have their own moon. Yeah, he was telling me, man, you go to this tribe, they think that this is their moon and this is their moon, and the education was very, very limited. And what happened, the people that paved the way for the Jews to come in actually were educated people in the West. They came mostly from the United Kingdom and some Eastern European countries that made the large population.
So I understand that. Point is this, when the Israelis went there, the Jews went there, they started pushing these people, local people, who accepted them, who said, okay, they can be here, and they put it over, and then they started
No.
pushing them toward the sea?
No, they were doing exactly what you see on television nowadays. What they did, they went in, they burned their villages, they burned their olive trees, and they told them, go to Abdullah. That's who's Abdullah? King Abdullah, the grandfather of King Hussein. Abdullah, who actually started the British told Abdullah, if you stab the Turks, the Ottomans in the back, by stopping the railroad, the Mecca railroad, the Hijaz railroad, and if you actually help us get the Turks out, the Ottomans out, we are going to make you the king of the Arabs. And he became the king, he became a king, but the king of a place called Transjordan, which today is called Jordan. So they gave him a piece of the desert and told him, this is your country. But the poor Palestinians, they were all driven out. That's exactly what they are trying to do in Gaza right now. Exactly. They told them, move out from the northern part of Gaza to the southern part of Gaza.
Very small example that if I invite somebody at my house, not invited, I said, okay, the person.
Explain to me, Allah, عشان السامع كويس.
Put him, give him the place, and then that person tell me to get out of the house, and I'm going to own the whole.
Well, if you are a humble person with no weapons, if you are a humble person who's not educated, and they kill your son in front of you, you kill the daughter in front of you, what do you do?
They have been at the.
Oh, vicious. As a matter of fact, go to YouTube, you find some of the people who perpetrated these activities. They talk about what they did. Jews from Israel. I don't know if you have seen it on YouTube.
It didn't happen overnight. I mean, they
Exactly.
started coming in the 1880s.
It was a planned move. Yeah.
And some of them bought land. Some of the Arabs sold them land. Some of the land was stolen. So from 1880s to 1947, 1948, all of this stuff is happening in the area. The Palestine was nominally part of the Ottoman Empire, and then Sharif al-Hussein, who was the Sharif of Mecca, he is the one that was, it was enticing for him to revolt against the Ottoman Empire. So him and his sons, he had a son that was in Syria, a son that was in Transjordan, and then a son that was in Iraq, and they were going to create a Hashemite, sort of Khilafah. And World War I, World War II. So you have to understand that the Jewish immigration from Europe to Palestine happened 50, 60 years before the establishment of the State of Israel. So it didn't happen overnight.
In fact, you can see the coins used in Palestine with Arabic, Hebrew, and English on it. So the Jews and the Muslims lived together. As a matter of fact, because I'm an old man, I went to school with people of the Jewish people.
You're still very young.
Alhamdulillah. But that is, I went to school with Egyptian Jews, and so on. But then the Israelis, their way of attracting the population from the Arab countries and the world to Israel is to create an urgency. The urgency is that the Arabs are trying to kill us. The Arabs are trying to invade us. We're living in the middle of people, we're a minority amongst the Arabs. So what they did, they created this urgency. As a matter of fact, I'm sure you know, the Israeli Defense Forces were financed by big Jewish businessmen operating in Egypt. And they were training in the Sinai under the Egyptian rule. And that is what created what happened. It's very sad, but that's not the subject of our discussion today. Yeah, but history is very sad. Yeah.
So my question's a little, so is the Christian, Jewish, and Muslim prophecy of what's going to happen to Israel and Palestine the same? Because the question why I'm asking is this: why are evangelical Christians and Jews so united? And do we all believe the future is going to be the same prophecy?
Well, only God knows the future, but we can attempt to create the future, and then it will be blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So my attempt is to create a Judeo-Christian Islamic West as one of the solutions. I'm not saying it is the solution. How do you create a Judeo-Christian Islamic West? It starts by getting to know the West. Like, for instance, you are a first-generation American, right? Mom and dad were immigrants, but we look at you as the hope of the future. You need to learn what's happening and what has happened, and come up with ways and means whereby you can be influential. It starts by excellence, because people follow the successful. We want you to be the top of whatever you do. The top doctor if you're a doctor, the top engineer if you're an engineer, because people follow the winners. That is what we want. And then the second thing is get to interact with the people. One example that I want to direct you to, and please tonight to go home and look at it. The golden rule of Spain, 800 years, where the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims lived together under the rule of Islam. They actually, if you read the history of the Hebrew language that's used by the Israelis today, it was all based on the rules of the language of the Arabic language. It was copied in the Arabic language. Very, very well-known scholar, actually, in Hebrew language, Palestinian professor, rahimahullah, who wrote a book about that thing. So what I'm saying is, we need to do something. Now, this will be as important as the brothers and sisters who are fighting today, because we want to create the future. Do I make sense?
I don't quite understand why, like, Christians, even like very right-wing Christians or evangelical Christians, are so, they also want this to happen.
Not deep in their heart. I mean, the masks have fallen down. I mean, the people, you need to talk to the evangelicals. You'll be amazed what they say. You will, and I worked with them to understand, because we need to understand. You cannot make a difference in the future without understanding the players that you're playing with. We do not. We lived in America now for almost 60 years. Very few of us learned how they operate. Not only that, but very few of us learned how the church operates. You know, and I'm not saying to go and contest them, but apply what they do to our Islamic centers. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, for instance, if you have an event in an Islamic center, do we have a post-event meeting to write down your experience in the event and what went wrong and how to fix it next time? So the next time you do an event, do we do that? I don't think so. but that's what I'm saying. We lived in America for all these years, and we need to learn so we can be sophisticated, because we deserve it. We got the best religion, but we cannot just stand on the table and say, we got the best religion, we got the best Quran, we got the best Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Well, how did it change you? You understand what I mean? So please tonight, read the golden era of Spain. You'll be amazed. And the second thing about the church is it's a business. The church is a business, big, huge business. And if you want to learn about the business of the Catholic Church, I'll be glad to show you the billions of dollars of properties they own around the world, right? So that's what, but thank you for your question. Number one, inshallah, right? Number one, okay, go ahead.
I was wondering if you could talk more about the Judeo-Christian Islamic America that you were...
Judeo-Christian Islamic America?
Yeah, like what exactly do you imagine by that? And I may or may not have a follow-up.
First of all, we need to make the Muslims an important part of the American heritage. Now, you listen to any president, any politician, we are a Judeo-Christian country, right? I want to reach the stage when they stand up and say, we are a Judeo-Christian Islamic country. Now, How can we do that? By building a bridge between the Judeo-Christians and the Muslims. Now, one answer was the so-called Abrahamic faith that is promoted by the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain and all of this stuff. But that's the wrong way of doing it. It's not done this way, by having a new sanctuary, which is called the Abrahamic faith and so on and so forth. That's not the way to do it. The way to do it is to respect the history of real Judaism and real Christianity and tie it to the religion that recognizes all of them. You understand what I mean? They don't know that. Like, for instance, when we get, I'm sure you have had people that came to the masjid here asking you to follow Jesus. I am sure. We have them all the time in Los Angeles. So people go and I stand up and listen to what the Muslims tell them and so on. Oh, we believe in Jesus. No, you don't believe in Jesus. Well, the issue is not to believe in Jesus. The issue is to inform them how to believe in Jesus and how we respect Jesus, alayhi salam. I hope I answered your question, but I don't know. I don't know the answer is how we can build that cultural link. Then after I die and all this generation goes, then your grandkids will enjoy a wonderful future, because the civilization of the West will last at least another 100 years. People think that's going to fall. It doesn't work this way. The civilizations implode from inside, and it's not done through wars and stuff like that. It's the history of civilizations, they implode on the inside. And وإذا أردنا أن نهلك قرية أمرنا مترفيها ففسقوا فيها فحق عليها القول فدمرناها تدمير. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates the reasons for a civilization to completely get out of business. How? By creating the reasons for the corrupt and the affluent to take over and become the leaders and decision makers, and then it will deserve to be destroyed. And that takes somewhere between 200, 250 years. So this place has got at least 100 years. We cannot wait for 100 years while Islam is annihilated. We don't want that. We want to, inshallah, come out winners, and it will be winners. If we don't do it, others will be doing it, inshallah.
I'm curious. I'm sorry, I don't.
No problem,
I'm a
no
new
problem.
revert, so do you know the hadiths of the end times?
No,
The end time, like what the end of days would look like.
no. And if I tell you I know, I'll be lying too, because only Allah knows the future. I know that the Christian church talks about this in their teachings and so on and so forth. I listen to them, but I respectfully disagree with them.
So, like one of the things that convinced me into Islam was listening to the prophecies of what the end of days would look like. And there's like a bunch, but the one that really caught my eye was that people will know what's going on in their houses by feeling on their thigh, right? And it's like to me, what made sense out of that is we all have phones in our pockets that are on our thighs, and you get texts and you get calls and you know what's going on in your house. Coming from the Judeo-Christian background will be a very valuable asset to this study, because we did not have the experience of sitting down with people in the Christian faith to study together these things. But please, start something along these lines. It would be a great research project. Yeah, and it would be a very valuable asset, because we believe, just the bottom line, that faith is what is entrenched deep in your heart and is manifested by your deeds and actions. Al-iman wa waqara fi qalbi wa saddaqa al-amal. That is what we believe in. Other things, these are actually things that are said to capture people's imagination. They can capture my imagination, capture your imagination, and so on and so forth. And like I say, it is like the preachers of Christianity, unfortunately, they use the Bible as a tool to sell people on things, unfortunately. With all my respect to them, and we have great respect when we deal together with each other. Yeah.
I think we can take one last question. before Salat al-Isha.
Dr. Assalamu alaikum for
Alexa.
enlightening us. And actually, I like your concept of Judeo-Christianic Muslims so much. I could not offer a solution, but I think what we try to do in this area is I tell our Jewish and Christian friends as my cousins. So I say Judeo-Christian Muslim I am. I think one way, of course, without going very deep into it, is to find commonalities, as it was done in Spain or Abbasites in Iraq. So instead of finding a lot of differences, which are inherent, if we say, of course, we know Abraham, we know God, and we know all the rules, so we are people of faith and practice our faith, and they practice their faith, and we practice each other. For example, from this center, we have relationship with 15 other religious institutions: Catholics, Presbyterians, Episcopalians, Orthodox, very conservative Jews, and very liberal Jews, and so on. So the result of it is that when, for example, the church gate happened in New Zealand. In New Zealand, there was killing in the mosque. Is it church gate? Christ Gate.
Church.
Sorry, Christ Gate.
Church of Christ.
Okay.
Christ Church was
So, by midnight, even before I knew the news, I had almost 50 or more messages of solidarity and sympathy and what can we do, and you're hurt. So from that experience and from others as well, we might draw that we have to extend the hand, as you said many times, samosa and chai. So we invite people to our house on Eid Day if they want to come. They do. So I think as new immigrants, new implants into this country and society, if we try to practice at least one or two or three neighbors as friends, I think they will understand us and they sympathize with us. Instead of seeing us enemies or contestants.
Yeah. Well, actually, just briefly, have your group, study group, and focus on a certain aspect, the aspect that you are familiar with. Like, for instance, you're okay. And doctor, I'm telling you, I mean, when we started with the evangelical, as a matter of fact, when we reached that decision, I wanted to document it. So my friend, the chief editor of the religious page of LA Times, and I said, Miss Watanabe, she said, what, I've got good news for you. She said, what, can you believe the evangelicals and the Muslims say that they worship the same God? I can't believe it. Well, she published it. The guys that actually worked on us, with us, some of them were removed from their positions. It's unbelievable. But you can do a lot of mileage if you got the good intentions, the good niyat, but we need to start with an open mind. You do not go in and say, well, I have a preconceived notion and this is the way I do it, but you do it with an open mind and learn how people think. And I promise you, you'll be successful. And you can deal with the Catholic Church, you can deal with the Evangelical Church, you can deal with the Mormon Church. I don't know if you had connections with the Mormon Church, right? So, but not photo ops. Don't fall in the trap of photo ops. You know what I mean by photo ops? That the sheikh stands up and in their garb and so on, and take a picture. Oh, hallelujah, we have peace between religions, and when the time comes, you need help. There's no help. That's what we want to do, right? And as a matter of fact, we intensified this. This is in the Ma'al Usri Yusra, in the Ma'al Usri Yusra. We intensified this after 9/11. After 9/11, everybody got scared. We said, no, we're going to open up the masajid. We're going to go out and engage. We're going to go out and get people to get to know who we are. And that was the most important decision taken in America at that time. So I hope, inshallah, because you got all the wonderful educated people and the wonderful young men who are coming and young women who are coming and so on. We want them to participate. We want you to bring your young men and women to come and get to know you. Invite them. Do you invite them to the masjid or not? Young ladies and young men, hello. Do you invite your friends to the masjid?
Invite them to the masjid in Ramadan. Wallahi, I can tell you stories like friends of young men and women in school, they would fast with their friends in support of Ramadan. We have kids in Northridge in the Valley in California who accepted Islam at the age of 13. It's amazing. You just try it. You haven't tried it. And the sky is your limit. You'll be amazed what's waiting for you out there. You can tell us about the story of you accepting Islam, right? And I bet you it's an amazing story. Am I correct?
It was a long one.
Yeah, but you eventually. Why? Because we do the best we can, but then who turns your heart? Allah. Allah turns your heart. We don't do that. We just leave it in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if Allah wants you to be a good asset for a wonderful future, He will appoint you. He doesn't tell you you have been appointed, but you will feel that things are directed in that direction and so on and so forth. So I hope these young men and women, inshallah, will bring your friends, right? Do you invite them to your homes? Yes? Do they see you praying when the prayer time comes? I'm very proud of you. Very proud of you. MashaAllah. How about you?
Dr. Yahia?
Yes? Very good. Yes.
I have a quick question. Thank you, sir, for your very simple, down-to-earth comments, including your very down-to-earth khutbah today.
Thank you very
of
much.
chai and samosa. Question to you is this. We have lots of parents, lots of children, some of whom are here today. And in school, they have tensions on what's going on in the world. The Gaza issue. What is your advice with your long experience?
Well, I'll share with you a very interesting story. Actually, it's a personal story. I have 5 grandkids who are all boys, 22 to 11. So the 11-year-old, he said, "Grandpa, I got an email from my principal." I read that email. It was telling them all the lies that our friends, the occupiers, I don't want to mention the occupiers, have been promoting. And I said, "What do you think?" He said, "It's propaganda." So I said, "Okay." He said, "No, I have to write him back." I said, 11 years old kid. And he wrote him back. But I'm just telling you because we need to learn. I'm not saying send it, but just have the young men and women, tell them the history of what happened, like what we just discussed with you. Right? So now you're going to be appointed as the person who's going to do the research on what happened, and then do it in down-to-earth language to teach your future generation children. What's your name? You. Seth? Saf. Like Safi yani ولا
like a safe.
huh? Safi? Oh, Saif. You are a sword. MashaAllah. Very good. So that's, for instance, we just spoke about something. Don't let it go and go away and khalas, gone. No, make this. I didn't plan to meet you tonight, did I? Did you plan to meet me tonight? Who planned it? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to you and to me. So say, I'm going to go and read Google. I'm sure you use your telephone quite a bit, right? So now you use it effectively and say, well, how can I teach the children at the school of the history? Not in an animistic way, whereby we have just in a truthful way, just say the truth. Then when their friends at school who are brainwashed with lies, they can respond by the facts and support it by the facts. And don't ever undermine a young man or a young woman. They are very smart. I learned a lot from my 11-year-old kid. You know, he goes, when we go out looking for cars, because he comes, stays with us on the weekend, And he says, Grandpa, I want to go and look at cars. We go look at the cars. And the guy, I don't know, he reads or whatever he does. He goes to the salesman. He knows more about the car than the salesman does. It's amazing. Don't undermine. They just try it, and you will never, ever regret it. Wallahi. Yeah, safe. Khalas? Promise. Alhamdulillah. Now you have a wonderful man who's going to take care of it. Yes,
I think we have for the time for the salah. So we'll continue the conversation after the salah, inshallah. Thank you all for your patience. Thank you very much, Dr. Yahia.
Thank you.
For
I have a
beautiful
few copies.
presentation.
I have a few copies. If you want, they are here.